Let me start by saying how happy I am to see all of you here. But one of the things I want to do tonight, the first thing I want to do, and probably the most important thing, is to acknowledge and thank all the alumni who came back in the middle of January to Hamilton, New York, to talk to the sophomore class about their futures. It's absolutely incredible that they do that. So will all the alumni volunteers please stand who are here? Thank you so much for doing that. Now on to the sophomores who are here. Congratulations for coming back and completing these last 2 days. You know, I've always thought of this class, this sophomore class, as being my class. And I watch you more closely than all the other classes. Because I arrived with you, and you may not realize this, but I actually only showed up to this campus a few weeks before you did. And I moved into my house quite literally 2 weeks before you moved into your residence halls. So I know what those first couple weeks on a campus were like, when the rhythms seem off and nothing seems normal or regular. But then eventually and slowly they do. You figure out where to eat, you figure out where to go, you figure out when you have to leave for class, you figure out what all the buildings are named. You know how classes work. You don't figure out the class registration system because no one can figure that out. But eventually, you get comfortable. And you are sophomores now, and so now you're no longer new. You are comfortable. So take a moment and consider that comfort. That feeling is the end of your Colgate beginning. It's the end of you being new at Colgate. And at this very moment, the moment when you're walking across campus, when you have that sense of mastery, when you say, I have this, that's when you have two choices. One, you can stay in that moment. You can be that person. And most people, when they master a new place or they master a new idea, they stay there. Or, secondly, you can realize you have a new, higher foundation. You're in a place now where you can see farther, you can see deeper. You can see things you couldn't see when you first showed up. So now I want you in this new foundation. I want you to reach up. I want you to be willing to get uncomfortable again. To look for things you didn't see before. And this is how you become the best, most authentic version of you possible. And that's what the world needs from you. The best version of you. The version of you that went up another level, grew and went up another level, and learned how to keep doing that. And that's what this weekend is all about. So I hope you learned a lot over the last few days. I hope you're both comfortable again, but possibly a little bit confused. Like there's too much information, there's too many new things. But remember, you got this. You're at a great university and you got this. And after all, you're my class, so you got this. So now, it is my great privilege to introduce the person who's going to introduce the keynote speaker. It's a whole sequence. It's going to unfold in front of your eyes. It's really dramatic. Please join me in welcoming Dean Paul McLaughlin.
Thanks, President Casey. And if you all have it figured out on a new level, I am still figuring it out, because as the Dean of the College, I'm beginning my 6th month. So I'm still trying to learn what many of you have already mastered. It is my pleasure to welcome all of you as well and to introduce tonight's keynote speaker, Amy Dudley, class of 2006. Amy is the chief spokesperson for the Chan Zuckerberg Initiative, the philanthropic organization founded by Priscilla Chan and Mark Zuckerberg. She previously served as Communications Director to United States Senator Tim Kaine, and on his 2016 presidential campaign as spokesperson and Senator Kaine's senior advisor. Amy also served as press secretary to Vice President Joe Biden during the 2012 re-election campaign and as his deputy press secretary in the White House. She has also worked for U.S. Senator Ted Kaufman in the Public Affairs Office of the National Democratic Institute for International Affairs and as a staff writer for the national journals The Hotline. Amy is a member of the Truman National Security Project, a nonprofit organization committed to advocating for smart, progressive national security solutions. While at Colgate, Amy double majored in peace and conflict studies and political science. She graduated cum laude as a varsity field hockey player and as a member of Kappa Kappa Gamma. She was the Student Government Association president between 2005-2006 and worked in the admissions office all 4 years at Colgate. We have much to thank Amy for, much to celebrate as her alma mater, and much to be grateful for in terms of her public service and commitment to peaceful, progressive solutions to conflict. Please join me in welcoming Amy back to Colgate and thanking her for being with all of us here tonight.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to meet you. Thank you, Dean McLaughlin. It's wonderful to meet you, and thank you, President Casey. I am huge fans of both of yours. You're doing a great job here. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much to my entire Colgate family for having me back for what is truly one of my absolute favorite weekends on campus. I look forward to it every year. I think I know what many of the sophomores here tonight may be thinking. This lady, this old-timer, is the last thing standing between me and my first Saturday night back on campus since winter break. Am I right? I know, the hockey game, maybe the jug awaits, maybe I'll be there later too. But I hope what you're also thinking is just how amazing it is that so many Colgate alums trekked here from all across the country to spend the weekend inspiring you for what's ahead at Colgate, as well as after graduation. So a big thank you to all of them, as well as the incredible career services staff that puts together this uniquely Colgate gathering every year. And one more to my parents who are here this evening, and a thank you to them. Thank you to them for making it possible for me to come to this amazing place for 4 years. So before I dig a little more deeply into my career journey, I want to talk about the value of this weekend, the true value, and how important the relationships are that you've planted seeds around this weekend. I know that when you're at a place like Colgate, looking around at your impressive fellow classmates, it's easy to feel like connections and internship opportunities might come more easily to some than to others. And I totally get it that the idea of networking can feel forced or phony or even transactional. But if you've taken anything away from the alumni panelists you heard from over the past 2 days, I hope it's an understanding that the secret to success is not about where you grew up or who your parents are, or even if you're really good at schmoozing. I believe a big part, a critical part, to finding your path and reaching your goals is about building meaningful relationships. And the act of building those meaningful relationships is what I am going to call the art of personal diplomacy. You can tell I'm a national security, international affairs nerd, so that is where that came from. So what it's really about is finding career allies, people you look up to in your fields of interest, or those who you share a personal passion with. And what I really mean by allies is the collection of boosters and mentors who believe in you and want to see you succeed and thrive today and in the future. And here's the best news of all. It's something that is absolutely within reach to each and every one of you, just by virtue of being part of this Colgate community. And you may not realize it, but just a year and a half into your Colgate story, each and every one of you has the beginnings of a career alliance. From your professors, to Colgate staff, and the career services team, to the alumni you just met this weekend, and the thousands of others who are waiting for your email or your phone call. Of course, your alliances will continue to grow in non-Colgate directions over the course of your lives, including future managers from jobs or internships, or peers or colleagues, maybe even future proteges and mentees. But here's the hitch. And just like what anyone who's taken an international relations course in Person Hall, my favorite building, already knows well, real, meaningful alliances take work to build and maintain. So a challenge to you all, by the end of this talk, think of at least one potential ally. You already have. Maybe it's someone you met this weekend. Someone you admire and think would want to hear about the subjects you pursue this semester or the internship you take this summer. Commit to write to that person soon. Not with an ask, but with a thank you, or a few words about how they've inspired you. Maybe even a handwritten note if you can fathom it. Take my advice, never underestimate the value of a handwritten thank you note. And don't expect an immediate response or an action to be taken on your behalf, even though you might get both, very good chance. But know that you're cultivating that relationship in the right way, and that someday, over time, when you do have an ask or need a trusted sounding board on a big decision, I can bet that Colgate ally will not only be willing to help you, but they'll probably move heaven and earth to do it. And if you never hear a peep back from that very nice handwritten note that you spend time on, a little polite persistence is okay. The truth is that even the very best allies get lost in their mail and their email inboxes. Just be mindful of your tone. I've gotten some good advice over the years to be assertive, not aggressive. And remember, nobody has to help you, but part of the art is making them want to. So that brings me to the story of how I found one of my most meaningful allies. A Colgate connection that I made through another fantastic career services program called A Day in the Life, which I hope maybe some of you have taken advantage of. As a sophomore at Colgate, I had a budding interest in politics and journalism. So I was over the moon when I got paired with Howard Feynman, class of 1970, and then the senior political correspondent for Newsweek magazine. What I thought was going to be a day in the magazine's newsroom in Washington, D.C., which I was really excited about, ended up being a day going from rally to rally across New Hampshire during the 2004 presidential campaign. Howard was covering General Wesley Clark, one of the Democratic primary candidates that year. So I don't have a picture of Howard and I for this day, unfortunately, but I did find one of a stop that General Clark made. We were in Hanover, New Hampshire, and I'm pretty sure I remember Howard at this stop telling General Clark that the pancakes at Beta would be better than whatever this fraternity is at Dartmouth. So that day was awesome, and I was officially hooked on politics and journalism. That following summer, Howard helped me land my very first internship in Washington, D.C., working at the hotline. That internship led to a full-time position after graduation and the beginning of my career in politics and media. Howard is still one of my very closest mentors and allies among a constellation of DC-based Colgate alums, people who I would have never dreamed would be so instrumental in my career when I was sitting in your chair as a sophomore. I know another theme of this weekend was identity. And hopefully by now you know that the alums you connected with this weekend aren't just CEOs or lawyers or marketing executives or insert generic industry here. Colgate people are multidimensional, and in many cases have merged their personal interests and passions into their professional lives and their alliances. I can also bet that for many of them, the root of that passion extends all the way back to their days at Colgate. Maybe they were a Cove volunteer, or a link leader, or a creative arts student, or a varsity or intramural athlete. Maybe they were like me, a student government nerd. Maybe they studied abroad on a Colgate study group. Maybe they were dancers or a cappella singers or leaders of a Greek organization. Bottom line, they had interests outside of the classroom then and outside of their professional lives now. When I was at Colgate, aside from focusing on my majors in political science and peace and conflict studies, I was admittedly a bit of a joiner, as Paul touched on. I do have a couple of photos from my days here, if you will indulge me. Bottom left is me and a few close friends outside of the very best first-year dorm, Andrews Hall, of course. I was a varsity field hockey player, member of Kappa Kappa Gamma, an admissions office volunteer. I studied abroad in Geneva, and then was student government president my senior year. And while those were opportunities that I enjoyed immensely, my classmates maybe enriched their Colgate experiences by cultivating hobbies or exploring their tastes in film or literature. My point is that these personal experiences, these identities that you're all cultivating right now, these things that are going to contextualize and differentiate you, might inspire some of the most fun twists of your professional lives. And you should totally embrace them. Shared personal interests and passions are key tools in your personal diplomacy playbooks and fantastic ways to cultivate meaningful relationships. So when you look back at my Colgate identity, you do start to see a through line to what I chose to pursue and still do today. A path that's not only tied to my academic areas of focus. I've been a political journalist at the Hotline, as I touched on. I worked in the public affairs office of the National Democratic Institute, an organization that works to strengthen small d democracy around the world. I later ran, I'm jumping ahead of myself, more pictures. I later ran communications teams for Senator Ted Kaufman of Delaware and Senator Tim Kaine of Virginia. I served in Vice President Biden's press office and later on 2 presidential campaigns. One win, one loss, which I'll get to a little bit later. Flash forward to today, my 8th job since graduation. Yes, 8 jobs in 12 years. Today, I lead the communications team and serve as chief spokesperson for the Chan Zuckerberg Initiative, a philanthropic organization founded by an absolutely fantastic couple, Mark Zuckerberg and Priscilla Chan. And 8 jobs in, ever since Colgate, my through line has been that I've always been a storyteller and a communicator for mission-focused organizations that I believe in and care about. It's experiences like being a Colgate athlete and serving in student government that give me the leadership skills that I deploy daily as a people manager. And that passion for storytelling and creative communications work, I trace it back to serving as a public-facing ambassador for Colgate in the admissions office. So the lesson there is, you really just have no idea what part of your identity is going to be your spark someday. Okay, so cue the less sunshine and rainbows part of my presentation and a little bit of real talk about the last decade plus of my life that I just kind of breezed on through. I think I made it sound pretty easy, but the truth is, it really wasn't. And some of the years right after graduating from Colgate were the hardest. The moment I realized I actually didn't want to be on the journalism side of politics and had to break that to my #1 ally, the really famous political journalist, Howard Feynman. In my next role, the feeling of plateauing and like I wasn't advancing as fast as others around me, that I didn't have enough responsibility that I should have at the ripe old age of 24 years old, which I know sounds old, it is not at all. So looking back, I realized that was definitely crazy, but it's not uncommon. And one very good thing my impatient 24-year-old gut led me to do was take 6 months and embark on a discovery phase to figure out what I really wanted to do. And a quick note, which my dad very much appreciated at the time, I took this personal journey while I still had a job and a paycheck coming in. So a pro tip is it's always better to be looking for that next opportunity when you have one. And that time of my life ended up being one of the favorite periods of my career. I met with everyone and anyone who would sit down with me to soak up their wisdom and find inspiration. And what I was really doing that period was building the next brigade of my alliance. With the help and encouragement of a few of those great people I met with, the next job I landed was the one that I finally felt that, aha, this feels right moment. That's when I landed my first job in government on Capitol Hill, which I know is ironic now because it's not open for business, but it's actually a really great place, and I hope many of you get to work there someday when it's open. So I know that plenty of people don't have that plateau panic, but may have realized their first jobs weren't the right fit for other reasons, like office environment or culture or location. It's more than likely, it's pretty much guaranteed that your first internships and jobs will look a lot different than what you're doing 10 years later. And chances are pretty good that you're going to try on a lot of different hats and a few different industries along the way. And you know what? That's not only okay, I think it's what you should hope for. My advice is try on all the hats. There you go, try on all the hats. So something else that can creep in along the way is a feeling called imposter syndrome. A feeling that even though you totally landed that job or internship because of who you are and the skills and smarts that you bring to the table, somehow you don't have even close to what it takes. You're definitely not cut out to be there, and it's only a matter of time until everyone figures it out. Does it sound familiar to anyone? It does to me. I've had that feeling more than a few times in my life. A lot in the early years, and even in some of the more recent ones. 3 pieces of good news about what is a really terrible feeling that you'll probably experience at some point. And if you don't, please promise to come back here someday and share your secret with all of us, because I'll be really impressed. Number 1, like I said, you really will not be alone in experiencing this. And sorry, ladies in particular, but a lot of women go through this at some point in their career. And even Melinda Gates posted on Facebook last week about her own struggle with it. Number 2, being out of your comfort zone is a good thing. President Casey touched on this. It can, if you channel it in the right way, it can keep you hungry and drive you in a good way. The truth is that you learn more and you get more comfortable every day, every hour, every minute that you're in a role. And even if it doesn't feel like it, it will get easier. And just like any thought or emotion, this imposter feeling will pass if you just let it go and you do your thing. The real trick is doing the best job you can in the present, not thinking too far back in the past or too far ahead either. Number 3, the F word, failure. Maybe a job or a role just doesn't work out. Failure is not only allowed, it's encouraged, because it is the most surefire way to make you better and stronger at whatever you do next. On that note, the last theme that I would like to touch on is about failure and the unexpected curveballs that can come your way. July 22nd, 2016, Senator Tim Kaine, my boss at the time, was picked to be Hillary Clinton's vice presidential nominee. As his communications director in the Senate the 4 years prior, I was one of 3 staffers that he asked to come along to the Clinton campaign with him. It was a tremendous honor. This is one of my absolute all-time favorite photos, which I know looks like a poor quality selfie because it is, but that's Senator Kaine in the back seat, looking like he just popped up because a minute before then he was laying down and hiding. This was 5 minutes after he got the call from Hillary asking him to be her VP, and seconds after we dodged a huge pool of press outside of the event that we were at, and if they had seen us sneaking out, it would have been a dead giveaway that he was the pick. So definitely a happy moment, a high point. And in just those 105 days I spent on the Clinton-Kaine campaign, I definitely experienced the highest of highs and the lowest of lows in my entire career. I had been very lucky enough to already work in a press office of a Vice President, Joe Biden, but now I was on track to run one for another one. Alas, things did not go as we or 65 million people across the country would have hoped. We failed. And a week after Election Day, I was back in the Senate wearing my old hat. Definitely not where I wanted to be, but I did know that my job there was now more important than ever. Curveball time. A few weeks later, I got a call from California. It was an ally of mine on the other end of the phone, a former colleague who I had worked with in 2012 on the Obama-Biden re-election campaign. He was now working at the Zuckerberg initiative. He asked if I would be interested in joining his team. My initial reaction was, that sounds amazing and exactly what I need in terms of a change of pace right now, but no thank you. I had never ever felt as loyal to a boss as I did to Senator Kaine, and I hope you all feel that sometime in your career. I could not imagine abandoning him. But after thinking on it for a few days, I called my friend back and I heard more about it. This was a major curveball across the country, leaving the city I loved, changing industries, but it was way too good of an opportunity to not consider. CZI was young, but changing the game of philanthropy already and poised to make a tremendous impact on issues I care about, like science and education, criminal justice reform, and economic opportunity. It was also clear that mission-oriented storytelling, my through line, my North Star, would be absolutely the name of the game there. And joining an organization like this in its earliest stages of formation is any communication strategist's dream. Here is a quick video that explains a little bit more about CZI's mission.
What is the peak? What is the potential that a human life has, and how do we bring that to everyone?
Well, there's no doubt the goals Mark Priscilla set out are lofty, but I believe you've never gotten anywhere by setting modest goals, ever.
Starting off by building the infrastructure to empower people around the world with tools so that they can create change on a much bigger scale.
And in science, our goal is, can we cure, prevent, or manage all disease in the next century?
The only way that Zuckerberg science will have the impact that we want it to have is if we make every scientist a better scientist.
It's about, can I actually create learning experiences that let any kid get the kind of benefit that you get when you have a one-on-one tutor? That's what we're uniquely qualified to do at CZI.
We want to build things that change the world. We're not satisfied with just building things. We want to build things that have impact and outcome.
We really want to shoot for goals that would change the way that our child's generation would be able to live their lives. That's what we're trying to do here at CZI.
So the next thing I knew, I got the job. I broke the very difficult news to Senator Kaine. He was very, very supportive. I said goodbye to DC for now, as well as the amazing set of allies that I had built there. My husband and I packed our bags and set off for our next chapter in San Francisco. Challenges, failure, and curveballs. You will have no shortage of any of them in your lives. Some of them may result in new allies, and some of them may not. But at the end of the day, my allies, my people, the meaningful relationships that I have worked so hard to cultivate since graduating from Colgate have been absolutely essential to navigating those ups and downs and just finding my way in this world. And before I knew it, I was the one paying it forward as an ally to a few Colgate students as well as young DC peers. So as I leave you to carry on your Saturday nights, I just want to say how truly excited I am for all of you to embark on this journey and how much I can't wait to see where it leads you all. So thank you all so much again for having me this evening. Good luck to you all. Go Gate and beat Cornell.
Hello, everyone. I'm Melissa Coley, class of '79. I'm the president of the Alumni Council, and I would like to thank Amy Dudley so much for those words of inspiration. Just fantastic. Thank you so much. And I would also like to thank her parents, because as we know, without you, there'd be no Amy. So thank you so much. I'd like to encourage all of you to continue the conversations that you've been having this weekend and continue the relationships that you've made. And I'd also like to encourage you to go to the hockey game tonight. And as Amy has challenged us to beat Cornell and yell really loudly for that. So this concludes our program, and I thank you so much for coming. Good night.